So if you see that the story or the short story going places, जो कि पॉसिबली एक होप है, एक डिजायर है, मीन्स जो कि आजकल के यंग बच्चों में हो रहा है, होता है, right? You can find out that the kind of hopes and desires that lie among the people, as well as the anguish. Anguish का मतलब होता है कि अगर आपका वो होप और वो जो डिजायर मीन्स टूट जाता है, then uh, what kind of means what kind of a feeling comes out, right? So you would find out here also same thing, like means the kind of a broken desires and unfulfilled promise create a kind of a anger, right? So you will find out that along with that the uh, teenager children, right, are called as boys and girls, so who are attracting with the kind of fantasy, right? And they also aim for or expecting to meet their hero worship, right? So that also create a kind of a you know interesting thing in this particular short story, and it somehow called as a relates to the practical life, uh, because A.R. Barton is a kind of a writer, whatever held in the society, means she tries to exemplify in her writing. And this short story is nothing but the means kind of an example to that, right? So that called as a young people, their dream, their breaking dream, their fantasy, and also their kind of aspiring to meet some hero, or called as a means they're worshipping for some people. And when that comes into so deep, right, how when it was or when it is also not fulfilled, or when they are not fulfilled, means what kind of means impact comes out, right? So you may find out the anguish, or you may find out the breaking of hopes and desires, right? So this story also deals with what, deals with the kind of intricacies of human relationship, deals with what, intricacies, right? So deeper part of human relationships, right? So the story's main theme is what, like hero worship and teenage fantasies. Teenagers often have a irrational means something which is called as a illogical, something which is called as a without having any reason or logic, right? Means legal rational expectations, without having any rational expectations, especially when their families are struggling, that may be called as a financially, or means in any other manner. So this is due to the fact that a young person's socio-economic background, राइट, सोशियो इकोनॉमिक बैकग्राउंड, सो लोग बच्चे सोचते नहीं है कि उनका फैमिली कंडीशन कैसा है, क्या है, राइट? सो फैमिली किस हिसाब से चल रहा है, राइट? बट दे नीड टू फुलफिल देयर ओन इंटरेस्ट, देयर ओन ड्रीम, राइट? सो एंड वो इसीलिए हो रहा है कि मीन्स उनके सराउंडिंग में, सो दैट्स कॉल्ड एज अ सोशियो इकोनॉमिक बैकग्राउंड that has a important impact on the job they chose to pursue, right? If the fantasy or the dream is too far-fetched of a person, it might result in a misery. So when your hope, your desire, and when your means aim or aspiration, so that are not fulfilled, so what you find out, the end is nothing but misery. Misery means called as a sadness. दुख होता है अगर आपने जो एस्पायर किया था, आपने जो सोचा था, आपने जो ड्रीम किया था, सो वो अगर फुलफिल नहीं होता है, तो यू फाइंड आउट द काइंड ऑफ अ मीन्स मिजरी और सैडनेस. सो in this particular part also, you see the main character as building castles in the air. Now, when you say that building castles in the air means there's something called as a nothing is there, but creating dreams, right? Which is called as a pointless activity, right? Which is called as a pointless activity. So when you are building castles and you don't know what the end of it, right? So there is a kind of a, it doesn't say that what you shall not see the dream, right? It doesn't say that you shall not see the dream. You see the dream and you try to fulfill it. But if it does not, then you shall not also means you shall not also feel misery for that, right? So here going places that introduces what now a short story that moves uh, again and again around a teenage girl, so whose name is called as Sophie. एक मीन्स बच्ची के ऊपर है जो कि जिसका नाम सोफी है, राइट? और उसके फैमिली के ऊपर भी है और उसके दोस्त के ऊपर. सो उन्हीं के ऊपर द शॉर्ट स्टोरी इज मूविंग अराउंड, right? She is a daydreamer. Who is a daydreamer? And what do you mean by daydreamer? Daydreamer का मतलब यही होता है जो खुले आंख से सपने देखना, right? So you find out that Sophie was the kind of a girl who was a daydreamer. So means who could see and who could see the kind of a dream which have no limitation, who is always lost in her dreams, जो कि अपने ड्रीम में हमेशा खोया रहता हुआ है, right? So and also you find out that means what are her dreams, right? Her dreams to become rich and live a sophisticated life, though in reality she is a worker. तो उसका जो एम ड्रीम है वो बहुत वेल्दी होना है, राइट? उसका जो ड्रीम है वो बहुत सोफिस्टिकेटेड होना जैसा है, राइट? लेकिन मीन्स रियलिटी में वो क्या है ना, शी इज अ वर्कर, राइट? सो at she is a worker at a biscuit factory, right? The story suddenly changed, right? The story suddenly twist when Sophie make a kind of a wild imagination of meeting Danny Cassie, right? So agar dekha jaye, who is Danny Cassie? Now Danny Cassie is none other than a famous footballer, right? So she also makes a story, right? She also makes a story in front of her brother, so that Danny Cassie will come to meet her on a fixed day as per a promise he made to her. Now, that's what is called as interesting. Uh, and that's what is called as a kind of a dream of her, right? That is why it is called as a daydream, right? If you talk about that, means you love very much to the football, and that's the reason you want to meet Messi, right? So and that's also you think that what means he is coming to meet you. That's something called as a daydream, right? So and that story, what you do now, you means share with your family members that what on a particular day that you have fixed, so somebody will come to meet you, and he made a promise to you, Danny Cassie. So that's what who thinks. Now Sophie thinks, right? That is what the introductory part. So let's go to the discussion of this topic. The passage starts with the idea called as when I leave, Sophie said, coming home from school. So I'm going to have a boutique. Jansi, linking arms with her along the street, looked doubtful. Takes money, Soph, something like that. I'll find it. A long time to save that much. We will be a manager then. Yes, of course, to begin with, till I have got enough. But anyway, I know just how it is all going to look. They would not make you manager straight off. Soph means Sophie. So I'll be like Mary Quant. Sophie said, I'll be a natural. They will see it from the start. I'll have the most amazing shop this city has ever seen. Now, when you look into it, the beginning start with what? When I leave, Sophie said, coming home from school. So Sophie said, this seems like what means uh, she was a school-going uh, teenager girl, right? So Sophie said, coming home from the school, that what? Now, when I leave, I'm going to have a boutique, right? So Jansi. So who is Jansi? Linking arms with her along the street looked doubtful. Means looked doubtful means seemed like what suspicious, right? Because whatever Sophie said doesn't seem like will do, right? Takes money, Sophie, something like that. I'll find it, Sophie said, stay, staring far down from the street. Now, when you look into this beginning of the story with a conversation between two teenage girls, one is Sophie and the other one is Jancy. So Sophie lives in a world of imagination, whereas Jancy is a totally uh, opposite to her, means practical. Sophie imagines of means owning a boutique, because she mentioned here that what means take money, Sophie, something like that. I'll find it. Sophie said, looking far down the street, right? Take you a long time to save that much. We will be a manager then. Yes, of course. No, they would not make you manager straight up, Sophie. I'll be like Mary Quant, Sophie said. I'll be a natural, and they will see it from the start. I'll have the most amazing shop this city has means, ever seen. Now, in that case, you can realize that the kind of imagination or daydream Sophie had. Sophie imagines of owning a boutique one day, a place where she can sell fashionable items or fashionable clothes, right? Jansi feels that it requires a lot of money, and therefore, right, to requires a lot of money for what? Now, to open a boutique. So therefore, she tells her that it will take a long time to what? Save that much of amount. And to this, Sophie replies that she will work as a manager, and when she will save enough money, then we'll work on opening up a boutique. She is interrupted. So Jansi interrupted her, and as she tells her that nobody will hire her straight up the managerial post. So who said to whom? Jansi said to Sophie. Sophie changes her plan and decides to be a fashionable icon like Mary Quant, right? She also adds that she will have the best boutique shop that no one has ever seen in the city. So you would see that the first paragraph begins with the uh, introduction of two of the protagonists. Protagonist means major characters, right? So uh, we also learn that what? Now we also learn that Jansi, knowing they they were both earmarked for the factory, became melancholy. She wished Sophie would not say these things. Right. Now, when you belong to a such kind of a poor uh, poor family and doing depending upon the kind of work that you do, so and your dream is something like that, so definitely it makes a kind of a contradictory, right, opposite, and it creates a kind of a sad also, right? So the writer moves forward and stated that when they reached Sophie Street, right, when they reached Sophie's Street, Jansi said there. What did Jansi say? Now it's only a few months away now, Sophie. You really should be sensible. They don't pay well for shop work. You know that. Your dad would never allow it. Or an actress. Now there is real money in that. Yes, I could maybe have the boutique, the side. Actresses don't work full time, do they? Anyway, that or a fashion designer, something a bit sophisticated. And she returned in through the open street door, leaving Jansi standing in the rain. If I ever, or if ever I come into money, I will buy a boutique. Ha! If you ever come into money, if you ever come into money, you will buy us a blessed, decent house to live in. Thank you very much. So you could see that the author stated with the idea called as a Jansi knew that what they were both earmarked. Earmarked means what? That called as they both were reserved, right? Reserved what? Now, reserved or worked for the biscuit factory, and they were means definitely doing that. So Jansi is a realistic person. She knows that in reality they are just workers at a biscuit factory. On hearing Sophie's thoughts, she became sad. दुखी हो गया वो. When they reach Sophie's street, when they reach to the Sophie streets, Jansi tries to explain the reality of their life, means Jansi and Sophie's life. She tells her that they don't receive much. So when you say that melancholy, the meaning of melancholy is called as a sad, right? So they don't receive much at the factory where they work. She also tells her that her dad would not allow her to leave the job. Sophie, on the other hand, because they all are depending upon the kind of a job they do, right? So Sophie, on the other hand, is still lost in her dreams. So whatever Jansi was telling to Sophie, so Sophie was not caring about it. So she still lost in her dreams. She says that she can also be an actress, right? As it would earn her a lot of money. She also wants to run a side business of boutique, as she thinks that actresses don't work full time. When they reach home, Sophie enters into her house and turns the door, right? Jansi is left alone. You can say that in the rain. Sophie is still murmuring the same sentences that if she will get the money, she will buy a boutique. So boutique means called as a place where means clothes are sold, right? Different things of ladies' items. So someone in the house teaches her that if she ever has money, she should buy a good house for her family. Now, while means uh, Sophie was telling the same thing again and again and entering the house, so and she was murmuring, or you can say that speaking slowly. At the same time, somebody teaches. So, like, because she said no, she if she gets money, she will buy boutique. So somebody in her family member said that if she gets money, she should buy a good house for their family or for her family, right? So you would say that means who were there in her family actually. Now, Sophie's father, who was scooping shepherd's pie into his mouth as hard as he could go, his plump face still grimy and sweat. So, plump face means called as a round face, still grimy. Grimy means called as a serious, or called as, yeah, serious, and you can also say that not ugly in the case. And sweat means that called as a uh, water drops coming out because of hot, uh, and it is stated also marked from the day she thinks money grows on trees, doesn't see that. So it means while Sophie was telling all such kind of things, so here the author introduces Sophie's father and also Sophie's brother. And Sophie's father was at the same time, when described the appearance of Sophie's father, was Sophie's father's face was like plump, means round shape, and grimy, serious, and sweating also. So from the beginning of the day, he was doing certain things. Now Sophie enters the house and uh, Derek, who is the means a brother of Sophie, said something to the father. And what did he said here? What did he say? Now he said that means Sophie thinks money grows on trees. Doesn't she that hanging on the back of his father's chair, right? So then after what happened? And if you observe this, Sophie's father actually, right? Just a minute, father's chair. Yeah. So you would find out that their mother's side, Sophie washed her back, stooped over the sink, and wondered at the incongruity. Now, when you say that incongruity, it's called as a inappropriate manner. Their mother's side, so side means called as a breathe out, breathe out, like taking a kind of a relax, right? Sophie watched her back, stooped over the sink, and wondered at the incongruity of the delicate bow which fastened her apron strings. Now you find out that means the father and son were talking with each other and criticizing to Sophie. So Sophie immediately looked her and bent down uh, the sink and wondered at the means incongruity, inappropriately of the delicate bow which fastened her apron string, right? The delicate seeming bow and the crooked back. Crooked back means that called as a, the kind of a appearance bent back. The evening had already blacked in the windows and the small room was steamy, right? Small room was steamy from the stove. Steamy from the stove means as the stove was used, and because of that the house uh, temperature got little warm from the stove, and cluttered with the heavy breathing man in his vest at the table, and the dirty washing piled up in the corner. Dirty washing piled up in the corner. Sophie felt a tightening in her throat. She went to look for her brother Job. Now you find out these are the characters in our family. So here you would find out that uh, clutter. So when you say clutter, the meaning of clutter is called as something which is not clean, right? We find out that Sophie's father eating a shepherd's pie. Uh, so his face was unclean with the dirt and sweat. Her younger brother Derek, so who said to his father, Sophie thought that money grows on trees. He also felt that what she was not realistic. Who Derek thought that Sophie was not realistic. Her mother, who was busy with kitchen work, took a deep breath. Sophie noticed her working in the kitchen, right? So her mother had stooping shoulder that were bent forward, right? So she had tied an apron uh, on her back, which was bent and not in the right shape. Which one? The apron. The apron was bent and not in the right shape. So maybe she looked so because of the heavy burden of work on her, right? It was turning dark, the outside also dusk, evening, and the house was full of steam and the kitchen was completely dirty, right? With litter or things are gathered here and there. So she felt uncomfortable. So she went up her brother Geoff, right? She went up to her brother Geoff. Now, up to her brother Geoff means she went to the maybe called as a upper store to find out her brother Geoff. So he was kneeling on the floor. He was kneeling on the floor in the next room, tinkering with a part of his motorcycle over some newspaper spread on the men's carpet. So when you say kneeling, the meaning of kneeling is called as a in a bending down or in a kind of a position in which body is supported by the knee, right? That is what called as a kneeling. So kneeling on the floor, like we usually say, no, kneel down and take basiba. So he was kneeling on the floor in the next room, tinkering. Tinkering means that called as a repairing. Repairing with a part of his motorcycle over some newspaper, right? So then after it is also said that traveling to his work each day to the far side of the city. So we were talking about Geoff. So who was traveling to his work each day to the far side of the city. He was almost grown up now. So यहाँ पे अगर देखा जाए, we were talking about Geoff, and Geoff के बारे में author ये describe करते हैं कि means जब मीन्स सोफी जिप को ढूंढने के मीन्स घर में ढूंढ रहा था, और व्हेन शी फाउंड आउट द काइंड ऑफ मिस हैपेंड इन द room, she went up to the find out Job, and Job was at the same time doing nothing but means uh, was kneel down kneeling on the floor and repairing uh, with a pair with a part of his motorcycle, right? And at the same time he was 3 years out of school. So he was 3 years out of school means 3 साल हो गया कि वो school छोड़े हुए. An apprentice mechanic means he was a learner. Mechanic means that called as he was learning mechanic job, right? Traveling to his work each day to the far side of the city. He was almost grown up now, so बहुत बड़ा हो गया है वो. And she suspected areas of his life about which he knew nothing, about which he never spoke. He said little at all, ever voluntarily. What's had to be prized out of him like stones out of the ground. And she was jealous of his silence. So who was jealous of his silence? Means Sophie was jealous of means whose silence, that called as a the boy whose name is called as a Job, Job's silence. So when he was not speaking, it was as though he was away somewhere, right? So if he was not giving any kind of answer, so uh, he was not speaking. It was as though he was away somewhere. So out there in the world, in those places he had never been, whether they were only the outlying district of the city or places beyond in the surrounding country. Who knew? They attained a special attraction, fascination, simply because they were unknown to her and remained out of her reach. So, if you say that Job was narrated, or sorry, Job was described, Job को इस हिसाब से describe किया गया है कि Job कहाँ था? Next room में था. So कर क्या रहा था? ना sitting with bent knees on the carpet. What he was doing? He was repairing some part of his motorcycle. So who he was? Na, he was a learner. He was a trainee mechanic. So mechanic job करता था. So who had left his school 3 years ago, right? 3 साल हो गया उसको स्कूल छोड़े हुए. He had to travel long distance in search of work. So means वो करता क्या था? Means दूर दूर जाता था means job search करने के लिए. Sophie was sometimes doubtful about his brother as he did not speak much about his life. So Sophie जेलेसी भी फील करता था अपने भाई के बारे में, क्योंकि वो कभी बोलता ही नहीं था. शी ऑलवेज इमेजिन्ड अबाउट द वे ऑफ लाइफ हर ब्रदर लेड. सो जिस हिसाब से उसका भाई जीता था, तो उसके बारे में भी वो सोचता था सोफी. शी वॉज सो जेलस ऑफ हिज साइलेंस बिकॉज शी वॉन्टेड टू know about the places that he used to visit. कहाँ जाता है, कहाँ नहीं जाता, मीन्स कहाँ जाता है, क्या क्या करता है. So everything Sophie wanted to know about her brother. She thought that there could be some distant places of the city or maybe some countryside. So all these thoughts were captivating because they were far away from her reach. So means Sophie did not know about those of the things, and that's the reason. Perhaps perhaps there were, you could say, perhaps there were also people, exotic, interesting people of whom he never spoke. It was possible, though he was quiet. Who was quiet? Job was quiet, did not make new friends easily. So, and Sophie wanted to know, Sophie desired to know them. She wished And Sophie wished she could be admitted more deeply into her brother's affection and that someday he might take her with him. So कभी कभी वो सोचती भी है कि कभी ना कभी उसके भाई उसको ले लेंगे, right? Though their father forbade, though their father forbade it, and Job had never expressed an opinion. She knew he thought her too young and she was impatient. She was conscious of a vast world out there waiting for her, and she knew instinctively that she would feel as at home there as in the city which had always been her home. It expectantly awaited her arrival. She saw herself riding there behind Job. So she saw herself riding there behind Job. He wore new shining black leathers and she a yellow dress with a kind of a cape that flew out behind. There was the sound of applause. Applause means called as a kind of a praise as the world rose to greet him. So if you see that, means Sophie's imagination about her brother's personal life, this paragraph indicates that, right? So Sophie thought that her brother never spoke about his life. So, but maybe you would find out that he knew some non-native people who were very interesting. So, non-native means you would say that those who are exotic. So, they are called as a non-native. So, uh, Sophie also desired, that called as a longed. Longed means wish or desire, affection. So Sophie wants that her brother would have more affection towards her. So uh, you also find out some other words like forbid. Forbid means mana karna, ban, prohibit, instinctively, without conscious thought. So उस हिसाब से अगर देखा जाए means though she knew that her brother did not have many friends, still, Sophie felt that it was possible that he might have some special friends, who might have some special friends. So, Job had. So, sometimes she longed or she wished she could become close to her brother, right? So that he would take her out with him. She would take her out with him means wherever he goes, right? So she will go with her. She will go with him. She knew that her friend, or called as she knew that her father would never allow her to do so. Even her brother considered her not big enough to go outside. So even if her brother accepted her, still they won't be go outside. But she was growing impatient. वो बहुत ही impatient हो गई थी. कौन? Means the girl Sophie, and wanted to go outside as she believed that she would be comfortable there just like in her own city. So she imagined herself riding. Imagine means again it came to the kind of a means daydream. She imagined herself riding with Job. He means her brother was wearing a shiny black jacket and wearing a beautiful yellow dress with a stole flying behind her as they would ride his motorcycle. She dreamed that people stood up to welcome her by clapping when she was with her brother or she rode with her brother. He sat frowning at the oily component, right? It was all considering as a means going back to the flashback and imagine all such kind of a thing, uh, or dreaming, or called as a daydream that you say. He sat frowning at the oily component he cradled in his hands. So when you say that cradled means called as a hold. Cradle means to hold in his hands as though it were a small dumb animal and he was willing it to speak. So who said frowning? Frowning means what? And the meaning of frowning is called as a getting anger, right? So where he was Oh, and he refers to whom? Now we were talking about Job, who was sitting, right, and who was a mechanic also, who was repairing the means motorcycle, you can say. He sat frowning at the oily component he held in his hands, as though it were a small dumb animal, and he was willing it to speak. I met Danny Cassie, Sophie said. He looked around abruptly. Where? So it's like a kind of an answer. In the arcade, right? Funnily enough, it's never true. I did too, right? You told that. So she shook her head, chastened at his unawareness that he was always the first to share her secrets. I don't believe it, right? So chastened means called as a happy, right? Uh, and also happy for what? Now, happy for what means that Sophie always shares her daydreams to whom? Means Job. So Jeff said that I don't believe it. There, I was looking at the clouds in Roy's window when someone came and stood beside me. And I looked around, and who should it be? No, but Danny Cassie. All right. What does he look like? Now, obviously, it's a means a childhood time, and you say something like in a funny manner. So, oh, come on, you know what he looks like. Close to me. I mean, well, he has green eye, gentle eyes, and he has not so tall as you would think. She wondered if she should say about his teeth, but decided against it. Right. Now, this part is clearly stated about the kind of a discussion they made with each other, or the conversation they made with each other. So, when her brother looked angrily upon her, right? At the and also at the same time, the oily part of the motorcycle that he was handling, he was trying to make it to work, but all his attempts were wasted. It seemed. Sophie said that she met Danny Cassie and a famous football player, and her brother suddenly looked at her and asked her where she met him, right? She said that she was in a gallery when she saw him. He, obviously, Job did not believe her and asked if she told this to their father. She did not approve of her brother's question, as she wanted to say that he must know that he is the one with whom she shared her secrets, right? So she began her story that she was at Royce's boutique and was looking for some dresses. So it was the first meeting, you could say, when somebody came and stood behind her. So she turned and found him. That who was it? It was Danny Cassie. Her brother asked her about his appearance. She told him that he had green eyes, or called as a gentle. He had a green color, gentle eyes, and was not as tall as she thought him to be. Right. So their father had washed when he came in, and his face and arms were shiny and pink, and he smelled of soap. Right. So he switched on the television, tossed one of little Derek's shoes from his chair onto the sofa, and sat down with a grunt. Sophie, meet whom? Danny Cassie, Job said. Sophie wriggled where she was sitting at the table. Her father turned his head on his thick neck to look at her like this. His expression was one of disdain. Disdain means called as a hating, hatredness. It is true, Job said. I once knew a man who had known Tom Feeney. His father said reverently means with respect to the television. But that was a long time ago, you told us, Job said. Right. Now, when you look into this particular paragraph, where you will find out some of the words like grunt, which means a rough voice, wriggled means a twisting or turning, disdain is called as disrespect, and reverently, which means with disrespect. So, what happened after that? Now, while both brother and sister were in their conversation, their father entered the room. He looked clean and shiny as he had taken a bath. Who? The father. He switched on his television and sat on his chair after shifting Derek's shoes. Derek's shoes means uh, his son's shoes from his chair to the sofa. So putting that shoes from the chair to the sofa. As he sat in his chair, Job at the same time told his father that Sophie had met Danny Cassie. On hearing this, he turned towards Sophie means, and he looked at her with the anger manner, disdain, because obviously, as a father, he could not means believe her. What did she say? Job clarified even. Job clarified it to be true. The father then told them that he once knew a man who had known Tom Feeney a long time ago. So, who was Tom Feeney? Tom Feeney was a legendary footballer. He took his name with great respect. Job agreed their father had told him this earlier. Right. Now, in that case, what happened? Now, you, a person who tells lie also believe that the other person, whatever is saying, something which is not in the capability, right? So will be lie. So same thing. Father was telling about Tom Finney, who was a great footballer, right? That he knew that person. Uh, so and that is why, and he was saying this to whom? Means he was saying this to uh, Sophie, and that's why at that time he was also saying the same statement again. And Sophie realized that it was his father, it was her father who had told him very early, right, that he knew a legendary footballer whose name is Tom Finney. And that is why father knew that it was a lie. And that's why father also understood whatever Sophie was saying, it was also a lie. Right. So that is what you would find out. Uh, we will keep till this and we'll continue after this in the next class. So next class probably tomorrow. Are you there?
Yes, sir.
So can we do it tomorrow 10 to 11?
Yes.
Okay, fine. I'll stop here. I'll do the rest of the things in the next class. Till then, bye bye.
Thank you, sir.
So we had a kind of a thought we understood so far. Uh, we have a two characters here, right? When we talk about the topic called as Going Places, which is written by A.R. Barton, we understood that it is nothing but a short story uh, that explores the ideas of hopes and desires of young people, as well as the anguish of broken dreams and unfulfilled promises, along with the teenage, where we talk about the two characters, um, and how those two characters are called as Sophie and Jansi. And we understood that how um, here the Sophie and her family, isn't it? Uh, and Sophie is nothing but a teenage girl who was not fantasizing and worshipping a kind of a character, right? Worshipping a particular character. It deals with nothing but the intricacies of human relationship. Intricacies of human relationship means called as a deeply involving into the human relationship. So that is what you would find out the central theme, um, that how the character worshipping the hero and becoming a kind of a fantasy or living in a dream. So we understand that teenagers most of the time have illogical thoughts and expectations, especially when they belong to the kind of a poor family. And this is due to the fact of what? The socio-economic background. When the socio-economic background means on the basis of the society, on the basis of financial background, that was not that strong, and it actually creates us important impact um on the teenage and their involvement into the kind of a profession, whether it can be referred to the jobs or called as studies. If the dream is too far-fetched for a person, uh, or called as the dream that they see and that cannot be fulfilled, that brings with nothing but the misery, or called as a sadness. And we see the main character as building the castles of dream in the air, which is nothing but a useless and worthless. So going places is the kind of a short story with that, bringing the introduction and pointing the characters of means Sophie, Jansi, and other family members. But out of that, you would find out the protagonist of this short story is a teenage girl, Sophie, right? And the story revolves around it, around her family, around her uh, friends. So it brings the idea called as a, when Sophie is a daydreamer who is always lost in her dreams of becoming rich and sophisticated, though in reality she is a worker at biscuit factory. And the story suddenly change when Sophie makes a wild imagination of meeting to another character called as a Danny Cassie, uh, who is nothing but a famous footballer. And she also makes a story in front of her brother that Cassie will come to meet her on a fixed day, as per a promise he made to her. So the story begins when you would find out that a conversation between the two of the teenage girls, Sophie and Jansi. Sophie lives in a world of imagination, whereas Jansi is a totally practical, or you can say opposite to her. Sophie imagines of owning a boutique one day, a place where she can sell fashionable clothes. Jancy feels that it requires a lot of money to open up a boutique. So she also tells her that it will take her a long time to save that much amount. So to this, Sophie replies that she will work as a manager, and when she will save enough money, then will work on opening up a boutique. And on the basis of that, she is interrupted by Jancy, and as she tells her that nobody will hire her straight up to the managerial post, right? Because it's nothing but a kind of a dream of Sophie to becoming a manager immediately, and will keep a lot of money safe, and through that she will open a boutique, and where she will get a means rich uh, in a night. So Sophie changes her plan and decides to be a fashion icon like Mary Quant. She also adds that she will have the best boutique shop in the town that no one has ever seen in the city, right? And with this also, means Jancy point out, Jancy is a realistic person. She knows that in reality there are just workers. There are means both are workers at a biscuit factory, and such kind of a things will not happen. So on hearing this, Sophie's thought means she felt also sad when they reached Sophie's street. Jancy tries to explain the reality of their life. She tells her that they don't receive much at the factory where they work. She also tells her that her dad would not allow her to leave the job. Sophie, on the other hand, is still lost in her dreams. You can say that she is a self centered girl. She says that she can also be an actress, as it would earn her a lot of money. So she also wants to run a side business, a boutique, as she thinks that actress don't work full time when they reach home. Sophie enters into you can say that her house, and turns the door. Jancy is left alone in the rain. Sophie is still murmuring, or called as a whispering, or slowly speaking something, the same sentence, that it is not real. So or if she will get the money, she will buy a boutique. Such kind of a thing will not happen. So and we also draw that it's a play, so it goes on like a conversation. When Sophie enters the house, someone in the house teases her that if she ever has money, she should buy a good house for her family. um, Sophie's father was also there, who was eating a shepherd's pie. His face was unclean with the dirt and sweat. So here the author is trying to describe the paucity or poverty present in the family. Uh, so where we find out the poor class father, how his appearance and what kind of a food he eats, how does he look like, dirt and sweat. So we also meet other family members like younger brother Derek, who said to his father that Sophie thought that money grew on trees, uh, to a kind of a mockery or a criticism to the girl. He also felt, means uh, Derek, who also felt that she was not realistic. Her mother, who was busy with her work, took a deep breath. Sophie noticed her working in the kitchen. Her mother had bending shoulders. Again, you would find out how the author means made the kind of appearance of the means of the poor class mother. Um, so it seems like she was busy with the kitchen work. She had tied an apron on her back, which was bent and not in the right shape. Means that's what indicating the how she was doing the hard work at the house. Maybe she looked so because of the heavy burden of work on her. It was turning dark and the house was full of steam and the kitchen was messed up with litter. So this seems also another feature of the paucity. Sophie felt uncomfortable, so she went up. Why did she feel uncomfortable? Because of Derek's comment, um, and her father's criticism, you can say. So she went to her brother, whose name is also Geoff. Um, we find out that Geoff was in the next room, sitting with the bent knees. She was doing some kind of a work on the carpet. He was doing what? Repairing some part of his motorcycle. He was a trainee mechanic who had left his school 3 years ago. He had to travel long distances in search of work. So Sophie's thought is what? Sophie was doubtful about his brother. Her brother, uh, as he did not speak much about his life. He was a kind of a character the author introduces as the reserve. Um, and therefore, Sophie does what? Always imagined about the way of life means Geoff lived, right? So she was jealous of it. She was jealous of his silence, direct silence. She wanted to know about the places that he used to visit. She thought that there could be some distant places of the city, or maybe some countryside. All these thoughts were kind of a captivating, or means uh, isolating, you can say that, because they were far away from her reach. So that could be the reason for which you could find out means Sophie was jealous of means Derek. We also draw the idea called as a Sophie imagined her brother's personal life, wanted to know about it. She thought that her brother never spoke about his life, but maybe he knew some non-native people who were very interesting. Though she knew that her brother did not have many friends, still she felt that it was possible that he might have some special friends. So sometimes she wished she could become close to her brother, wanted to know her brother, so that he would take her out with him. She knew that her father would also never allow her to do so. Even her brother considered her not big enough to go outside. But she was growing impatient and wanted to go outside, as she believed that she would be comfortable there, just like in her own city. So she imagined herself riding with Geoff. He wearing a shiny black jacket, and you could find out that she wearing a beautiful yellow dress with a stole flying behind her, as um, they would ride his motorcycle. Whose motorcycle? Geoff's motorcycle. She dreamed that people stood up to welcome her by clapping them. She rode with her brother, right, Geoff. Now this is what called as a kind of ideas, or a dream that who Sophie sees, right? So she sees the two dreams here. One is called as a Geoff, who is her brother, and the other one is called as a means her meeting with the means a famous footballer, right? So we find out that her brother looked annoyed or angry upon her at the while he was busy with some kind of a work uh, of his motorcycle. He was working with the oily part of the motorcycle that he was handling. He was trying to make it means what you can say that he was trying to make it work, but all his attempts were wasted because he did not succeed. Sophie said that she met Danny Cassie, so who was a famous footballer. Like I told you, she was dreaming two of the people. One is her brother Geoff, and the other one is Danny Cassie, a famous football player. Her brother suddenly looked at her and asked her Where did she meet Danny Cassie? She said that she was in a gallery when she saw him. So, who? Job did not believe her and asked if she told this story to their father or not. She did not approve her brother's question, means she did not, means, you can say that she ignored her brother's question, as he wanted to say that he must know that he is the one with whom she shared her secrets. So she did not want to tell any other people in the family, but she wanted to share all the things with her, means brother Joe. So she began her story that she was at Roy's boutique. Again, you find out, and was looking for Roy's boutique, means indicating the another setting in the dream. Setting means called as a the place which was created in her dream, and that place is nothing but Roy's boutique, and was looking for some dresses when somebody came stood behind her. Right. She turned and found him, Danny Cassie. Now, where did she meet? She met at Roy's boutique and was looking for some dresses when somebody came and stood behind her. She turned and found him. It was none other than Danny Cassie. Her brother asked her about his appearance, means Danny Cassie's appearance. How did he look like? Sophie at the same time told him that he had green colored gentle eyes and was not astral large, means she thought him to be, means like Jove, right? So we also find out, while both brother and sister were in their conversation, their father entered the room. He looked clean and shiny as he had taken a bath. He switched on his television and sat on his chair after shifting Derek's shoe from his chair to the sofa. Uh, so, who was Derek? Derek was the younger brother of Sophie. As he sat in his chair, Job told uh, his father that Sophie had met Danny Cassie. So, on hearing that, um his father turned towards Sophie, and he looked at her in a anger manner, scornfully, you can say scornfully, because he could not believe what Sophie said. And Geoff clarified that it was true. The father then told him that he made a kind of a criticism here, that he once knew a man who had known Tom Feeney, right, a long time ago. So, who is a Tom Feeney? Now, like Sophie, who was dreaming about Derek Cassie, who was a famous footballer, similar to that, means her father made a kind of a gimmick, or called as a kind of a mockery or fun, and stated that he also made one of the character called Tom Feeney, was means, and who was Tom Feeney? Was a legendary footballer during in his time. He took his name with great respect, and Geoff agreed their father had told him the earlier. It means it was something like a very coordination with the kind of a conversation. And this is nothing but on the perspective of the father, that it was a completely criticism, right? So then you would find out that they were discussing football players. uh, Father said that he thought that one day Cassie might become as good as Feeney. Someone among Geoff and Sophie replied that Cassie was better as he was very talented, but their father did not agree that. He said that he was very young, and as there were so many, diversion, separation from a young footballer, he might work hard. Job did not agree and said that he was with the best team and the best players too. Right. Meanwhile, at the same time, Sophie told them that Cassie was going to buy a new shop. Her father looked at her angrily and asked her where did she get to know this, that Cassie was going to buy a new shop. So he doubted it to be one of her imagination. her brother interrupted and said that she met him, right? Uh, she met him. Her father warned her that such things could lead her to trouble. She then tried to justify herself by saying that Job knew this and trusted her. Right. So her father replied that he did not believe her, although he wanted to. Right. So up to this, we understood that the kind of imagination of whom means Sophie about Derek Cassie, uh, and how Job supported to her, although he did not believe that. Right. We could also make an addition here that Sophie's father, uh, making a kind of a statement about a person, Tom Feeney, right? So this could be creating a kind of this could be creating two of the ideas. Either means he did not want to lose the faith of Sophie, and that's why uh, he made this story, or he created this story, or this could be called as a kind of a criticism and create a kind of a thought, thought of what? Thought of fake uh, in the mind of Sophie as well as Job. Right. Up to this we have read. Now let's move to the next one. Am I clear so far, Aditi?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now moving to the next, that's called as the table lamp cast an amber glow across her brother's bedroom wall. Right. The table lamp cast an amber glow across her brother's bedroom wall and across the large poster of United's first team squad and the row of colored photographs beneath. Three of them of the young Irish prodigy, Cassie. So, promise you will tell no one, Sophie said. Nothing to tell is there. Promise Geoff, Dad would murder me only if he thought it was true. So look into the kind of a conversation between means two beautiful sibling, right? Brother and sister. Only if he thought it was true. Please, Jove. Christ, Sophie, you are still at school. Cassie must have strings of girls. No, he doesn't. How could you know that? He jeered, right? He told me that's how. As if anyone would tell a girl something like that. Yes, he did. He is not like that. He is not as quite as all that, apparently. It was nothing like that, Geoff. It was me who spoke first. When I saw who it was, I said, "Excuse me, but aren't you Danny Cassie?" Right? So, and he looked sort of surprised and he said, "Yes, that's right." And I knew it must be him because he had the accent, like accent is called as a kind of a pronunciation, like when they interviewed him on the television. So I asked him for an autograph for little Derek. For little Derek means for young brother Derek, but neither of us had any paper or a pen. It means neither Sophie nor means Danny Cassie had. So then we just talked a bit about the clothes in Roy's window. He seemed lonely. After all, it's a long way from the west of Ireland. And then, just as he was going, he said if I would care to meet him next week, he would give me an autograph then. So Danny Cassie offered Sophie to meet him next week. He would give her an autograph then. Of course, I said I would, as he would ever show up. You do believe me now, don't you? So who is saying? Sophie is saying to Geoff. So he dragged his jacket, which was shiny and shapeless, from the back of the chair and pushed his arms into it. She wished he paid more attention to his appearance, um, wished he cared more about clothes. He was tall with a strong dark face, handsome, she thought. It's the unlikeliest thing I ever heard, he said. Now, if you observe that, right, what the meaning of prodigy here actually? The word prodigy, where it is stated, no, um, Yeah. So it is stated three of them of young Irish prodigy. Now, what do you mean by prodigy? Now, prodigy means called as a young person with exceptional qualities. That's what is called as a prodigy. And here it is referring to whom? Now, here it is referring to the young Ireland people. And here Cassie is considering as a nothing but a young person with exceptional qualities, right? So the author wanted to point out Job's room was full of pictures, pictures of footballers, right? So there was a picture of Cassie too, also who has been described as a young Irishman with exceptional qualities. Sophie told her brother another secret of her, but of her, uh, you can say, but on a condition that he would not tell all such kind of things to the to her dad, or called as their dad. So his brother did not want to believe her, but listened to her because of her means undue stress, or called as a means you do not want to break the heart of that girl. So she then told him that when she met him, it was she who started the conversation. Means Sophie started the conversation by asking him where he was. Danny Cassie. She also asked for an autograph for little Derek. Um, but Aj, both of them did not have any pen and paper. He promised to give it in their next meeting. So that's what is the offer means Derek Cassie made to Sophie. Her brother did not believe this as he was doubtful of what she was saying. So he picked up his jacket, right? So he picked up his jacket and left. Sophie wondered if her brother did not care about his looks, much though he should be doing so because he was tall and handsome, right? We also, if you look into the next part of it, on Saturday, it started with another one. On Saturday, they made their weekly pilgrimage to watch United. So pilgrimage means what? Now the what pilgrimage means called as a religious journey, right? Here their devotion towards football match, right? So on Saturday they made their weekly meeting, you can say that, towards football match to watch United. Sophie and her father and little Derek went down near the goal. So Geoff, as always, went with his mates higher up. United owned 2-0 and Cassie drove in the second goal. A blend of innocence and Irish genius, going around the two big defenders on the edge of the penalty area, with her father shouting for him to pass and beating the hesitant goalkeeper from a dozen yards. Sophie glowed with pride. Afterwards, Job was ecstatic. Ecstatic means called as a excited. I wish he was an Englishman, someone said on the bus. Ireland will win the World Cup. Little Derek told his mother. When Sophie brought him home, her father was gone to the pub to celebrate. Right. So it makes a sense here that it was the Saturday. Uh, Sophie, her father, and two brothers went to see the football match of their men's favorite team. Right. And they went together. So it was a regular theme. Sophie and her father near the goal, Geop also. Uh, you could find out it was a regular thing of them because they were uh, all huge fans of football. Sophie, Derek, and her father stayed near the goal, right? Sophie, Derek, and her father stayed near the goal. So you know that they all went for the watching the football match of their favorite team. So you would find out their position. Sophie, Derek, and her father stayed near the goal. Geoff went up higher with his friends to see the match. Team United won the match with, you could find out a score of 2-0, right? The second goal was made by Cassie, and he did it with beautiful or perfection. Everyone was happy. Sophie was so happy that she glowed and Job was so excited, right? So you would find out of this family member, Job and Sophie. Sophie's father went to the pub after the match, and so she brought her brother Derek back home. So Sophie, uh, Derek told his mother that this time Ireland would win the World Cup. Now that's a kind of a prediction they made. So what's this? What is this you have been telling? So Jansi said, next week about what? Now your job told our Frank you made Danny Casey. Now who said? Jansi said. What did Jansi say? Now Jansi said that what is this you have been telling? Next week about what? So your Jove told our Frank. So Jove was telling to Jansi's brother Frank that what means Sophie made Danny Cassie. This was not inquisition, right? This was not inquisition, just Jansi being nosy, right? But Sophie was startled, right? Oh, that? Jansi frowned, means got anger, sensing she was covering. Yes, that. Well, yes, I did. You never did, Jansi exclaimed. Means uh, when Sophie was saying that, yes, she did meet Danny Cassie. So Jansi is surprised and exclaimed, no, you never did. Sophie glared at the ground, looked at the ground. Damn, that Jove. This was a Jove thing, not a Jansi thing. It was meant to be something special just between them. So it, as you know from the beginning, it is pointed that Sophie was telling to Jove that, or the author stated in the conversation that how Sophie was telling all her secret to Jove only. So that's why here when Jansi stated uh, means all such kind of things that Sophie said to Jove. So Sophie here surprised and stated that he should not do such kind of a thing. It was not a Jansi kind of thing. Means Jansi should not know all these things. So and tell a gawky Jansi, right? So graceless Jansi, something like that, and the whole neighborhood would get to know. So and Sophie believed that if Jansi knew about Sophie and Derek Cass's meeting, then definitely Jansi would spread means in the neighborhood, right? Damn, that Jove was nothing sacred, right? So you would find out that it is a secret, mean to be. So Sophie was just telling about that. Sophie explained to Jansi that this was her secret, right? I will keep a secret, Soph. You know that. So Jansi was saying that she did not want to share it because then people would line up outside their house and ask about this, right? So that's why Sophie said, you know that I was not going to, I will keep a secret. So I was not going to tell anyone. There will be a right old row if my dad gets to hear about it. Jansi blinked. A row means, row here means called as a noise, right? People will gather. I would have thought he would be chopped as anything. Chopped as anything means cheerful, right? I would have thought he would be cheerful as anything. She realized then that Jansi did not know about the date beat, right? So Geoff had not told about that. She breathed more easily, means she felt relaxed. So Geoff had not let her down after all. So he believed in her. After all, some things might be sacred. It was just a little thing, really. I asked him for an autograph, but we had not any paper or a pen, so it was no good. So, how much had Job said? Jesus, I wish I would have been there. Of course, my dad did not want to believe it. You know what a misery he is. So, but the last thing I need is queues of people round our house asking him what's all about Danny Cassie. He would murder me, and you know how my mom gets when there is a row, there is a noise that happen in our house. right? So Jansi said, "Hurst, you can trust me, Sophie. You know that." So she even tells her Jansi that her dad did not believe her, and Jansi promised to keep whatever things she heard would keep as a secret. Uh, You can say that after dark, she walked by the canal along a sheltered path lighted only by the glare of the lamps from the warp across the water. Now, if you talk about after dark, she walked by the canal. Canal means here it refers to the way toward a waterway, right? So, along a sheltered path lighted only by the glare of the or means shining of the lamps from the warp. Warp is called as a duck across the water. And the unceasing drone of the city, unceasing means called as a continuous sound of the city, was muffled. Muffled means that called as a messed up and distant. It was a place she had often played in and when she was a child. So it refers to the Sophie's dream. And Sophie was telling that how she walked by the waterway and along a sheltered path lighted only by the shining of the street lamp from the warp across the water. That warp is called as a duck across the water. And the continuous drone sound of the city was also confused and distant, not clear. It was a place, which was a place that called as a canal or waterway, was a place she had often played in when she was a child. There was a wooden bench. Wooden bench means a bench which is made of wood. She sat on a wooden bench which was under a long elm tree, right? So, yeah. So there was a wooden bench beneath a solitary elm. A solitary elm means called as a, you can say that a single tree, right? Solitary means lonely or one. Elm is called as a single tree where lovers sometime came. So she sat down to wait. It was the perfect place, actually. She had always thought so for a meeting of this kind of a place. For those who wished not to be observed, she knew he would approach. For some while waiting, she imagined his coming, means Derek Cassie, and yeah, Derek Cassie. She watched along the canal, seeing him come out of the shadows, imagining her own consequent excitement. Not until sometimes had elapsed. Elapsed means pass or go by. So she began balancing against this the idea of his not coming. Right. So means it is something like after a while she realized that means Derek Cassie was not coming and it was just her imagination. So that's what she felt. Uh, we find out the setting again means came out to means different places. One is called as a boutique and the other one is called as a Sophie's house, and this one is again called as a shelter, means waterway, right? So where she could hear the noisy city, and she recollected the moment of her childhood days and how she sat on a wooden bench where she was waiting for means uh, Danny Cassie, right? And she was uh, telling about the place as well as the things which are placed properly in that particular place. Uh, and she was lost in her imagination of Cassie coming to meet her. And after a while, she was imagined that it was nothing but a dream that was not going to uh, be turned true, right? So she pointed here. Here I sit. She said to herself, wishing Danny Cassie would come, wishing he would come, and sensing the time passing. I feel the pangs of doubt. Pangs means called as a pain. Uh, Pain of doubts stirring inside me. right? I watch for him, but still there is no sign of him. I remember Jeff saying he would never come, and how none of them believed me when I told them. I wonder what will I do? What can I tell them now if he doesn't come? But we know how it was Danny and me. That is the main thing. How can you help what people chose to believe? But all the same, it makes me despondent. Despondent means called as a disheartened, dislike, disdain, right? This knowing I'll never be able to show them they are wrong to doubt me. She waited, measuring in this way the changes taking place in her. Resignation was no sudden thing. So now I have become sad, she thought. So you would realize here that while she was present in the kind of a place called as a waterway and looking along the waterway, many thoughts came to Sophie's mind. So she waited for Danny to come, but he did not come to meet her. She felt a kind of a pain inside her. She thought that people did not believe the kind of a story she told them or she had told them. If Danny Cassie, she could tell them that she was not lying, right? So if Danny Cassie means was not coming, then she could means she could be considered lying. Again, she thought that it is not an easy thing to make everyone believe oneself. As so many thoughts were coming to her mind, she felt like many changes were taking place inside her. All this was very painful, and she wanted to leave now, right? And means she felt very sad, um, and it is nothing but a kind of a hard burden to carry. This the kind of a sadness hover on him or hover on her. Sitting here waiting and knowing he will not come, I can see the future and how I will have to live with this burden. They, of course, will doubt me. They means referring to the people as they always doubted me. So her family members, her friend, but I will have to hold up my head. Hold up my head means I keep the confidence how it was. Already I envisaged. Envisage means I predict. I predict the slow walk home and Job's disappointed face when I tell him he didn't come. So means she realized that when she means say all such kind of a thing to her brother and her family member, so how they would feel disappointment. Disappointment means feel called as a kind of a embarrassment, right? So and then he will fly out and slam the door, right? But we know how it was. I shall tell myself, Danny and me, it is a hard thing, this sadness. She climbed the crumbling steps to the street. Outside the pub, she passed her father's bicycle, propped against the wall. Means propped is called as a means leaning against the wall, and was felt very happy. He would not be there when she got home. So but at the same time, excuse me, but aren't you Danny Cassie? Coming through the arcade, she pictured him again outside Royce's boutique. He turns, reddening slightly. Yes, that's right. I watch you every week with my dad and my brothers. We think you are great. Oh, well, now, that's very nice. I wonder, would you mind signing an autograph? Now, look into it. When you find out that Sophie became sad, she felt it to be very tough to bear the burden that Danny did not come to meet her. She had been waiting for him, though she knew that he would never come. She was also worried about how people would doubt her and believe on what she said. She also thought that Job would beat hard against the door on knowing that Danny did not come to meet her. So she is quite sad now. As she was walking back to her home, she saw her father's bicycle in front of the pub. She felt happy that she would not have to face her father on while reaching home, right? Or when she would be, means she would be there, right? So at the same time, while Sophie was returning to her home, she passed through the means Royce boutique. She again imagined meeting Danny Cassie there. So she again tried to initiate a talk with him by asking him that what if he was Danny Cassie, and also asked an autograph, right? So, and he says that I don't seem to have a pain at all. You realize you haven't either. My brothers will be very sorry, you say. And afterwards, you wait there alone in the arcade for a long time. So, long for a long while, standing where he stood, remembering the soft, melodious voice, the shimmering of green eyes, no taller than you, no bolder than you, the prodigy, that excellent guy, the innocent genius, the great Danny Cassie. And she saw it all again last Saturday, saw him ghost past the lumbering defenders, right? Heard the 50,000 catch their 50,000 catch their breath as he hovered momentarily over the ball. And then the explosion of sound as he struck it crisply into the goal. The sudden thunderous eruption of exultant approbation. Now look into the words like lumbering, hovered, momentarily, thunderous, eruption, exultant, approbation. So if you talk about the word called as a melodious, means musical. Lumbering, which means called as a in a very awkward, odd way. Hovered means called as a move or fly. Momentarily means called as a briefly, right? So when she asked for an autograph, and you understand that what happened after that, they both realized that none of them had a pen and paper, or pen or paper. She felt sad for her brothers. When Cassie left, Danny Cassie left, she kept standing there, thinking of his sweet voice, green eyes, innocent, and his genius. Then her imagination took her to the football match. So, imagination took her to the football match where she had watched with her family in the last Saturday. She imagined of Danny Cassie, uh, means hitting the goal in such a courageous way that she felt an explosion on the football ground. She felt, means Sophie felt, means explosion on the football ground. She felt so overjoyed with the winning of the United team, uh, and with the heroic performance of Danny Cassie, her hero. So, see the kind of a story which was beautifully, means made into such a uh, conversation or in a play for, uh, and here we find out the writer, right? So you could find out A.R. Barton tried to present the kind of means dream the teenager weave into their mind, right? So the kind of a character and temperament of Sophie and her family members, especially Sophie's father. Look into it, Sophie's father, who is nothing but a plump and an aggressive person, right? Sophie, afraid of, Sophie afraid of her father, right? And her anger also, his anger also. He doesn't believe in the wild stories of means of his daughter, but as a caring father. So he reminds her not to make such stories, as this could lead her to trouble. So even he also made a story of the football fan, because he visits the football ground with his kids every Saturday. So to watch his favorite team, United, play the match. He also wishes Danny Cassie to become like Feeney. and he enjoys the winning of his team by visiting the pub. So at the same time, uh, if you talk about Sophie's brother, Jove, right? So Jove was an introvert type of person, and so he spoke less about himself. This made Sophie like him as she thought that he visited some secret places that were full of interesting people. So she tried to win his affection, his love uh, for her, in order to get a chance to ride with him to that special place where she would visit by wearing a beautiful yellow dress. She also imagined of being welcomed by the crowd there. Sophie wanted to live that beautiful life which was full of colors and happiness that Jove lived, but she could not. So, all total, if you talk about the background that Sophie belonged to, Sophie belonged to a lower middle class family. How do we know that? We know that on the basis of a small house with her family. It also introduces when the author stated about she was working in a biscuit factory. So when she returned home from school, she felt uncomfortable because of the steam and the untidy look of her house. Her mother was a stoop because of the burden of the work she did. Her father was a laborer and her elder brother was a mechanic. She also worked in a biscuit factory in order to support her family. So such things indicated that Sophie belonged to a means lower middle class family, right? And uh, how her dream, right, uh, which was which was nothing but her fantasy towards Danny Cassie, brings her misery, right? And in complete story, you would find out that the author's focus is on this teenage girl Sophie, right, and her fantasy, and picturizing as a she's a daydreamer. I hope you understood.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Sir,
Any,
I have some doubts.
please do ask.
So, what is the meaning of Gawky?
Spell the word.
Gawky.
Okay, gawky means that's something called as a disgrace, shame, or something which is not looking good.
And can you please repeat the meaning of lumbering? I couldn't write.
What?
Lumbering.
Tell the word again. Plumbering.
Lumbering, sir. Lumbering.
Oh, L-U-M.
Lumbering.
L-U-M-B-E-R-I-N-G, right?
Yes, sir.
It's
Yes, sir. Yes.
that's something called as moving in a very odd way, like not properly. Like you find out that somebody who was moving in a zigzag manner, right? Odd manner, moving in an awkward manner.
Forward.
Sorry, hovered, H-O-V-E-R-E-D. Hovered means called as a move or fly. Or you can say that live in a particular one place, remain in a one place. Next,
Approbation.
that called as a acceptance. Accepting, approval.
Exultant.
Exultant is called as excited. Excited.
Yes.
Okay. You do one thing, keep all these doubts. I have another class now, 9 to 10. So we'll meet tomorrow.
what time, sir?
9 to 10. 9 to 10.
Okay, sir.
Bye.
Sir, one more
Huh.
thing. Sir, do you remember I was telling about my cousins and one of their friends, three students, they want to start the class immediately. Sorry, sir, actually I forgot to ask them, and it's already 3rd Feb, so when will you start? Otherwise, I'll send my aunt's number, she'll directly talk to you.
Yeah, that will be better actually. That will be better.
Yes, sir.
Mm.
Okay, sir, I'll send.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, sir. Bye, sir.
Mm.